Check, check, 1 2 1 2. Check, check, 1 2 1 2. I'm gonna have to kind of refrain from responding to people on chat because I want to get to this as quickly as possible. And so we've got to move forward and move fluidly. So good morning. This is almost noon, depending on what part of the country you're in, but good morning. This is Langston Masingale. I am the executive director of Bbase. I'm also the CEO of Handsome Audio. And today we're going to be going through something that I've been very excited about doing, which is a fundraiser for Bbase, which is the Bbase Summing Mixer Kit. Now, we've already sold a few of these, and we still have plenty of them to go around and to ship out to people. But what I wanted to do is kind of dispel some of the unsurety about what it would look like to actually have a DIY kit in front of you that does summing. And of course, people are like, well, what is summing, right? What is the purpose of having something like that in my studio? So really quickly, I'm just going to introduce you without too much ado to one of the boards from the Bbase Bus kit. I have many of these here, right? We decided to work with Narrative Audio, who you know is helmed in part by Ayanna Thomas. And what Narrative Audio did for us is design a summing platform that we can use to fundraise. So that was Ayanna's contribution to Bbase, was this actual circuit and these PCBs that we can now sell as a way to fundraise to people so that they can, experience this. So again, what's up with all the hoopla about the summing mixer kit? Well, I'll tell you. First of all, I need some music. I'm gonna put on my jazz because it's Sunday and it's jazz. There we go. Let me know if the music's too loud. I'll turn it down. So this is the input board of the Bbase summing mixer kit. So what you'll notice right away is there is a lot of holes in this board. This is known as a PCB, right? Or a printed circuit board. Okay. There's obviously the Bbase logo. And if you have really good eyesight, you'll see it actually says the Black and Brown Association of Sound Engineers. Yay, yay. We in his house today on Sunday. And on this board, there are all these different parts that are labeled, right? So before we zoom into that, right? What I want you to take notice of is that everything on this board, maybe we should zoom in. So before we start throwing components on here, let me see if I can zoom in on y'all. Get that nice and crispy. All right. So as you can see, pretty much everything on here is labeled, right? Watch somebody try and take this circuit and act like they invented this in some gentrified area of Philadelphia. Nope, black guy made it in his house. So this design and this PCB, everything is clearly labeled. So you can see that R5 has a value next to it, R4, R1, right? There are capacitors on here. That's what the C stands for, is a capacitor. There's even areas where there are diodes, right? Clearly marked and laid out. And there are inductors here, okay? And then these two particular devices here, these are known as JST headers. And what a JST header is, if I got one laying around somewhere, let's see, do I? A JST header, this is the wrong size, but a JST header basically is, yeah, the music's just there for ambiance. It's not there to like overpower. We're not trying to have a concert, 607. We're just trying to get some mood going. So a JST header normally is a socket that accepts a plug that looks like this, right? So this type of plug, what's really nice about it is you can only insert it one way. You can't insert it the wrong way. Now this is a 6-way. There are 2-way connections that are out there. But the idea behind that, let me see. Now y'all got me looking for one. Okay. All right, what we're gonna do is get ourselves one. So I'm gonna pull this out. So this is the proper, come on. They also don't come out very easily, which is really nice. I mean, they'll pop out, but they lock into place, which is great. So here is the proper size one for this board. It's pretty small, right? But what happens is when you install the socket here on the board, then the one that receives this, it just plugs in a certain way. So you just actually plug that in, and this forms an audio connection. So this actually carries signal. For example, this particular jack is actually carrying signal from the input, which is the TRS connection, okay? And this kit utilizes these types of headers specifically and these cables so that it makes it very much simple to install the wires on this, right? You'll see all these guitar pedal kits and things like that, and 1176 kits and so on. And sometimes it's very difficult to install the wire because you have to thread wires through circuit board holes and all that jazz. And, you know, people say, well, it's point to point, hand wired and all that. And me, I'm about the sound, and I'm also about durability. So, I mean, there's a chance that maybe somebody wants to uninstall this or modify it or put it back together. Well, now you have this handy cable. It's pre-cut. It's got plenty of length to it. And this makes it much easier for you to install a working circuit, right? So again, you see that all the stuff on this board is labeled and laid out. And then on the back, let's see what's on the back of this, okay, is the name of the board, right? So you have the summing input board Rev 3 2020. It went through several revisions until I got this, you know, until I got this to a point where I thought it was good and we were able to tell narrative audio, okay, let's put these into production so we can fundraise, right? But these are very, very much well thought out and field tested. And, you know, again, this is one of those things where this is a great introduction into how to build stuff, right? The board's not very complex. You only have to do 8 of these to make a summing unit. And because it's through hole, there's no special tools needed. You just need your fingers, a soldering iron. I mean, you can buy sometimes a soldering iron at Family Dollar or Dollar General. Like, they sell soldering irons everywhere. You can buy them on Amazon, right? And then this kit actually includes these wires. It'll include the socket that accepts the wires. And then it also includes the parts. So let's start with some of the fun stuff. So this is a 150 millihenry inductor, right? And this is actually part of the bass filter for this input section. This equalizer actually boosts the bottom end, the mid-range, and the top end using these inductors. So it has a 150 millihenry inductor. Come on, lay down. It has a 3.3 millihenry. Oh, this one's very playful, apparently. A 3.3 millihenry inductor. This is for the mids and highs. And then we also have the capacitors that are needed in this circuit to form the filters. So we have a 680 picofarad capacitor. Just put them right there. We have a, let's see if you can see the marking on that. Come on. All right. A 0.033 microfarad capacitor, film cap. And we have another ceramic capacitor, which is a 680 picofarad. These are the only caps you'll need on this board to make it function. These are all supplied with the kit. Now, what we didn't go through today, and we won't, just because there's a good deal of resistors on this PCB. There's 10 to be specific. but they're all clearly marked, and everything comes in baggies with labels on them. We have color-coded instructions along with 3D pictures of how stuff is supposed to look on the board. And in addition to that, there will also be classes that accompany the purchase of this kit, right? And last but not least, one of the best looking parts of this kit, which I think is really cool, and I picked these because of their appearance and because of their rareness. In a lot of people don't like these diodes, but I dig them. And when I began researching like ways to really help that company get a better sound out of it, I said, you know what? Why don't we try some diode saturation and compression, right? And these diodes are used very rarely in audio circuits. Sometimes you only see them in guitar pedals. A lot of times you see them in power supplies. But these are 1N4148s. These are what are supplied with this kit, and they go into this section here, which actually forms a compression saturation filter that's fed. Now this is what's really cool. It's fed by this filter. So once you send your signal in here, right, it goes into this capacitor inductor network, right? And so let's say you have boosted highs and boosted lows. That's pretty much what this does. It's like a fixed boost in the lows, highs, and mids, right? And these frequencies that come out of this inductor filter network, right, then go into this diode compression network, right? So it's kind of like turning up the EQ into a compressor, right? And then what happens in addition to that is there is a signal in what we call parallel. So that means it kind of acts as a alternate path that goes directly to the output and is reduced in voltage so that you only have a little bit of it coming into the output, right? So it forms almost like a feedback section, right? The diode compression saturation area of the input of this summing mixer uses a little bit of filtering and some controls like resistors to control how much saturation you get at what volume and how long it will kick in for based on frequency. So it's actually a very intelligent kind of like dynamic EQ with saturation, right, as the front end to your summing mixer. So what this all means in a nutshell is that if you're pushing volume into this from your DAW, right? So let's say this you have 8 of these, right? They all will then sum down. We'll do that in another video, but they'll sum down and merge. So basically like they'll mix all the signals together, right, into the output section, which is where the transformer's at. But what's really cool is you can take these 8 signals and push them. So let's say you have your drums on bus 1, which is left and right, and you got your vocals on 3/4 and your bass on 5/6 and your piano on 7/8, right? So you can just push the drums up really hot on the outputs of your DAW, and this input section that feeds your summing will actually saturate and create sounds that are not there normally in any other scenario, right? And why is this important? Because normally, if you look at what summing mixers do and how they function, they tend to be on what's known as the clean side, or the only a little bit does a lot, you know, under really extreme circumstances kind of school of thought, right? So really they're about fidelity and maintaining the purity of the signal. And while there's a place for that, not everybody has a wall full of gear, right? And a wall full of other devices that will help accomplish, or a folder full of really good saturation that's going to help them accomplish that. So if you have a summing mixer that's doing the job of several devices all at once, it really creates a new working principle that allows you to think differently at mixdown time. And in addition to that, get new sounds out of a very basic setup. There's quite a few people, excuse me, there's quite a few people that have a multi-channel interface, no outboard equipment, and that's it. So if you were to use something like this kit, which is only $100, and it includes all the parts. It includes the jacks. So for example, there's, let's see, I'll show you this real quick. I actually have one here laying around because this is the subject today, right? So here is the input jack section. So we'll just move this over a little bit. We'll slide y'all to the right real quick. Here is the input board, right? And that's TRS. So this is a balanced input, and it has another, here's that header, right, that you'll use to connect to. So for example, here's this. You won't be using a 6-pin on this, but there's 6 pins available. But what you'll have is so here it is. So here's the cable. And it just goes on like that. And bam, you're in business, right? You get 5 boards that have not only the layout for what you need to do, so you'll get the header. You'll get 2 TRS jacks per board, right? These are Neutrix TRS, no cheapy stuff. And then you'll also get the little jumpers here. Let me pull this off real quick. Come on, you. Okay. You also get the jumpers that go here and here. Reason being, the way that this summing mixer works is we go unbalanced. So we use this jumper to break the balanced connection at the input. So we short pin 3 to ground if we put a what's known as a jumper. So there's going to be like a 2-pin version of this, right? It's going to be a 2-pin version of this that goes here. There's going to be 2 of them. And then if you put, it looks like a little plastic cap, if you put it, but it's metal on the inside. So if you slide it over the 2-way jumper, it will actually short pin 3 to ground. Very useful, helpful piece of information, because that actually helps lower the noise floor rather than just leaving pin 3 floating off of a balanced connection. We actually short it to ground so that it doesn't incur any noise or EMI interference or RF. So you need that on the inputs of this. So you get all the necessary parts to do that. You get 5 of these boards because one of the 5 also forms the output. And then you'll have, the connection to this from the transformer board. Right? But again, getting ahead of myself. But the bottom line is that you'll have these components. You'll have your resistors, your inductors, right? You have your board, my black and brown, there we go. You'll have your capacitors, right? Everything that you need to make it possible for us to be successful when we make this. I'm going to really quickly check on Facebook and see if there's anybody giving me some feedback or questions that may be of use. So let's see. Boom, there's my wall. One moment, folks. Nope, looks like we're good on Facebook. So these are the core pieces to having a really cool input section. So let me go back a bit, right? Because we're getting, I think that because, hold on, I need my coffee. One moment, please. Let me just grab my Java. So I think that might help me focus. I got this focus coffee with special ingredients in it from Amazon.com. Supposedly there's magic mushrooms in this coffee to help you focus. I feel better already. And I got my King T'Challa cup from Black Panther. So why am I using inductors to form filters in this summing mixer circuit? right? Why would anybody want to do that? Well, inductors are used in very famous old school equalizers, right? Such as the Pultec, right? And the Pultec is notorious for having an amazing sounding bottom end, having an amazing sounding top end, sweet highs, you name it, right? To quote Shirley Caesar, you name it, right? Pultecs are capable of doing some really sweet sounding tones when you need to boost highs or you need to massage the bottom end of a sound or a source, right? They sound great on drums. They sound fantastic on vocals and other instruments, and you can really dial in some amazing sounds. So by using inductors, now these are modern inductors. They're very small. They're not meant to visually impress you in terms of their size. These are tiny. But these inductors nonetheless do the job, right? And because they're able to give you that top end and mid-range authority and bottom end that really has, you know, it smells of analog, right? Like immediately, like, yo, I know what that bottom end is like with Pultecs and the Neve EQs and some of the other famous ones through history. By utilizing this technology and by using, you know, these values for these capacitors in conjunction with, you know, a pretty old school way of controlling signal, which is a diode, right? And then using filtering in parallel with that stuff to really create these effects, you get a summing mixer that, bottom line, right, allows you to just do something to the sound that normally you can't do, which is invaluable, right? Like, I mean, there's summing mixers that are thousands of dollars on the market that are just designed to cleanly reproduce what you put in and then give it right back to you the way it sounded before it went in, but just slightly different, right? There's like slight degrees of incurred harmonic distortion, or maybe because of the amplifier stages used, that's where you get the sound from. And for me, I think that in order for this to really be valuable, not only as a teaching tool, but also as an actual piece of equipment you'd want to use in your studio, like, let's be real, like, Bbase is not trying to just fundraise with junk so that we can get $100 out of a bunch of poor people and, you know, do our business as a not-profit, when the reality is that this is also a way for us to create a little bit of financial equity and freedom for people that don't always have the cash, right? $100 is still a lot of money to most people. So being able to give someone for $100 and all they have to do is put some sweat equity into this, right? You can learn how to solder this, make a piece of gear that's really cool, and I'll teach you some things along the way because I helped develop this. And so I know there's ways you can modify this. There's Easter eggs hidden in the design. But in the course of learning how to use this, you'll not only get a fantastic piece of gear, but then you'll also begin to look at other things. Like, look, I don't make all the kits in the world that are out there for you. There's 1176 kits. There's Neve 1073 kits. There's API 312 kits. There's Pultec kits. There are tube compressor kits. There's guitar pedals, right? There's a lot of different things that are accessible to you if you know how to work with schematics and you know how to work with circuit boards and soldering. And you understand the proper way to insert things. You know the proper way to orient them on a circuit board. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit because I want you to see the relative size of the board. It's like the end of Saturday Night Live. That's what the soundtrack sounds like. All right, so there's nice and crispy. Okay, so by comparison, does do I even own coins anymore? Is coins even a thing in 2020? One would think I'd have a penny around or something like that. Okay, well, this is something that people can identify with. So this is a plug. You ever see these? These are like used to break the ground on your outlet when you need to, plug something in that isn't grounded and is creating hum or something like that. But just, I want to give you a size reference. So this is how big this board is, right? There's obviously a huge difference in size between this and that, but if you know how small that plug is, that's how small the circuit board is. But still, everything is made to go together very easily and to give you the confidence to continue to do something like this. I mean, this is laid out on purpose so that you can, right? So let's see, right? So let's do the big inductor. So the inductor, look, like the pins are bent a little bit, but they slide right in, right? Simple. Little inductor, there's only two. Again, these choices were made deliberately so as to make it simpler. This one requires a little bit more effort, but that's the idea, is to hold it, right? These parts go in relatively easily, right? Let's do a 0.033. Everything's laid out so that you can actually get closer and closer and closer to your goal without too much stress. Once you learn how to identify what's what, because remember, every part's labeled that's on this. That's the 680 picofarad, slid right in. And the last cap is the 0.039. These are all in baggies with labels on them so that when you're putting this together, you'll be able to follow along very easily with the class. You'll be able to do things in the proper order. A lot of times when you're making a circuit board, what part you put in first kind of determines how easy it is to install the other parts. So like if you put these in first, when you're soldering, let's say you don't have a third hand, like that's a tool that people use to hold PCBs up in the air so they can solder them. If you do the capacitors first, when you lay this on its back, it kind of acts almost like a platform, you know? I mean, the reality is you should really invest into something like that. But I mean, even if you have like a spare piece of cardboard or, right? One could, in theory, set this on there, or, one of the things I recommend people use is a piece of masking tape to kind of tape the components on if they don't have a third hand. And that way, stuff won't move around when you're soldering it. You tape the top in, so like this side, you'd put like some masking tape across it and then just, secure it here and here. And then when you flip it over, the parts won't fall out. Sometimes it's a pain in the butt sometimes if you bend the pins, even if you go, you do crossways like that. Some people aren't really great with trimming the pins when they're bent. So we go through a couple of methods about how best to proceed with installing this stuff. But again, I just wanted to kind of show you that this is going to be available. And as well, what's really cool is that this kit also comes with a template. And the reason being is because the template, right, actually has a drill profile on it, or a cutting profile, that you can actually put right on the shipping box that this comes in. That's right. So when this arrives, it's going to come in a really cool looking box with the label on it, right? And the label will be placed in a part of the box that you won't see when it's sitting on a tabletop. And what you can do is take that template and where, let's say that this is like a cutout. So it'll say like cut here, cut this circle here. So you follow that pattern with that template, taped to the box or whatever. You don't need to keep it there when you're done, but you can really cut right through the template with like an X-Acto knife, or if you don't have like that, you could use like a steak knife or something like that, and you'll cut through the cardboard. And then once you complete that pattern, the TRS jacks will fit through the hole on that PCB I showed you earlier on that board, and you have nuts. Here's one of them, right? You have a nut, and you'll screw that to the TRS jack through the cardboard, and this will stop on the cardboard. And then when you're done, all your TRS jacks are held in place buy the nut. And now your shipping box is now this really cool electric metallic looking case for your bass bus kit. We've measured it with no case of any kind, and it was super quiet. Down to like when we had a full loaded summing engine where it was 8 channels, the noise floor was -96, made up at full gain, which is really amazing for a summing mixer. Okay? Like, that's really important to understand, that when you work with passive summing mixers, which is what the bass bus kit is, a lot of times one of the negative stereotypes about summing mixers that are passive is they're noisy, unless certain things are observed, right? So a lot of summing mixers use balanced internal summing. So they'll keep pin 3 on the input. So they'll keep 2 and 3 and then sum down with the resistors on a matrix. It's a lot of nerd jargony stuff, but basically they take a balanced series of signals and sum them down to a balanced signal. What that means is that they also incur less noise because there's less gain to make up when you're making up the gain from summing, because summing incurs what's known as loss. Just like with Zulu, when you run into Zulu, Zulu tends to lose a little bit of volume, so you have to make that up either in the computer or with the input gain of whatever the next stage is, or at the input gain of Zulu itself by driving more gain into it. Fine. But there's always that challenge of signal to noise ratio when you do that. That's true for everything. But this particular design, because we wanted to be able to put effects on stuff, right? We needed to go unbalanced unless we were going to do like twice as many. And that just seemed like too much work for somebody that was just getting into summing or into just making a circuit board. So what we did is we went unbalanced. And then that way circuits like the inductor, filter, and things with the caps, you know, all that would work fine, right? I'm just going to pull these bad boys out of here. I don't know why I'm using tweezers. I just like using tweezers. Makes me feel like I'm doing a science project. So by going unbalanced, now we can just take a single pole signal, do all these amazing filtering and saturation and compression effects to it, right? And then feed that into the summing mixer as if, you know, just like everything's normal. And because we're using these awesome transformers to do it, we don't really have a lot of problems with noise. And because it's truly balanced, it makes it a lot easier, you know, and we strap the transformer to be very friendly to a microphone input, which is very important. Right? Like if you don't impedance set correctly, then you tend to have some issues with how the resultant signal will sound when you amplify it. But because we're using that system and everything is set up the right way, so we're doing all the heavy lifting unbalanced, and then we go balanced only at the output, we get this amazing sounding result. For those of you that have been on Discord listening to the sound files of this, I'll have to share them on YouTube as well. The bottom end is just immaculate on this device. The saturation adds an amazing energy. One of the engineers that I showed this to said that it sounded like it was mixed, even though it was the same exact mix before it went out to the summing mixer. Before that, you know, and it was summed internally in Reaper. When I showed them what happened when I sent that same exact mix at the same levels, right? So nothing else changed except where that signal went. It was like night and day. There was a big difference in bottom end. There was a big difference in the way that the mix moved and felt. The stereo field was different. And overall, it was just a massive improvement on the record in general. And that's a key part of what makes things like this very important, is that we need things like that in our studio, right? Because digital is not going to do it for you. You get close, you know, if you're really, really good at what you do. But the fact is that being good at that versus being good at something else are not interchangeable, right? Like some of y'all are just not designed to be computer programmers when it comes to being musical. And I identify with that wholeheartedly. I think that using an analog device to perform something that you would need several digital devices to do, and the know-how of how to perfectly tweak them to get that sound, which would still not be the same thing as just simply plugging in a cable and running audio through it, it's a no-brainer. And plugins cost $100 and they, you know, they do whatever they do, but this is a real piece of analog gear that Bbase is contributing to improving your home studio and professional studio setup for that. I mean, you don't need to use the cardboard box that this comes in as a case. You can definitely go get your own case made and, you know, use the drill pattern that we provide for the TRS jacks on a metal box or a plastic box, and it'll be just fine. You know, this is a very small platform. You know, this is a nut for a 1/4 inch jack. Look how big it is compared to the PCB. This is a very small circuit, but it's a lot jammed into that so that you can fit this into just about anything, you know? So hopefully we'll get some feedback and questions on this from the audience, either live or later on. You can always email us at info@thebase.org. These summing mixer kits are for sale right now on base.org. So on thebase.org. So if you go to thebase.org/bus kit, right, you'll find this. It's $100 plus taxes and shipping, because pretty much we have to collect taxes for everybody and pay for shipping. But this ships to you very quickly because it's priority mail and it's at a discounted rate. So it'll get to you like within about a day or two. And then again, everything that comes with this is all you need to have a perfectly functioning finished product. You'll of course need to assemble it because it is a DIY kit, but it comes with instructions, online video support, and all the components needed to make this possible for you, right? This is just a few of the components that we supply. I wanted to just show you what they look like. For some people, this is their first time seeing these sorts of things. And so we want to kind of dispel that, oh, I don't know nothing about that, or that's not my thing, man, or, you know, I'm not an electronics technician. These are very simple electronics devices that are used in complex, thoughtful ways, but all of that thinking and figuring out has been done for you. And so what I'm trying to get you to understand as an educator with Bbase is that these are things that you can do. These are things that you can learn, even if you don't become fantastic at this, right? You may still be able to, if a cable breaks in your studio, you can now fix that cable because now you own a soldering iron. Now you own solder and you can repair that cable. You can go on YouTube after that and be like, oh, snap, that's easy. That's way easier than the kit I just did. And who knows what that will unlock in your mind and in your perspective on electronics. This is actually a pretty straightforward project for a teenager. So moms and dads, if you have a child in your house, you know, that's, you know, of adequate age, you know, 13, you know, maybe 12, like an extraordinary 11 or 12-year-old would be who I recommend this for. But if you have a 16 or 17-year-old daughter or son that's interested in things like this is a great little gift for them, especially if they're into music. Because, I mean, you could plug a keyboard into this and it will do stuff to it. You know, a DJ mixer, a drum machine. If the child owns like an MPC, who's a what's it, right? And they plug that into this, you're going to get some results out of the sound of this, which won't be there beforehand, and you'll hear it right away. So it's a fantastic way to introduce that child, you know, to new avenues they might want to pursue. You know, some folks might want to join the military and you go learn tech in the service. Some people may want to go to college or a community college and take a correspondence course in electronics design because of this. This is definitely speaking also to, you know, I have a selfish interest in STEAM and STEM, right? So this is a great project for a child that's into making, you know, making music with their guitar or their drum kit. They may want to build this and give that away as a Christmas present to somebody, right? And it goes to a great cause. The Black and Brown Association of Sound Engineers was founded in 2019, and its mission is to create a safe, nutrient-rich environment for people of color to flourish in the audio industry in all the fields and opportunities that are out there for us. It includes skill sharing opportunities, it includes job sharing opportunities, as well as professional development such as this, where you would learn electronics. And it also includes a space where we can communicate about the challenges and issues that we face as people of color in this very special, very vital, very lucrative industry. And without Bbase, you know, I don't know what would happen in the audio industry in the next 5 years. Like, we need to understand that our platform has immense value. So does our dollar. And as well, we need to be catered to. Much like we discuss politics, we need to discuss these guild and membership-based organizations that are willing to take our money, take our presence, take our content and our talent and utilize it to enrichen themselves and their own personal cohort of people. However, without our music, without our content, without our presence and our energy, right, and our and just our everything, these organizations would not be the same. Imagine what America would be like with no rock and roll, right? With no rap music. How many people would not have a job right now if there was no such thing as hip hop music, right? Or jazz? What are the origins of those music, right? Who invented that stuff? What are the origins of the new wave of technology that's going to change and enrich an industry that in many ways is growing more and more stagnant every year, right? Technology is not meant to be a stagnant incarnation of our thoughts. It should constantly be growing and progressing, and yet it's not. But in my opinion, it's because the most valuable voices and the most needed voices are not at the table and are not being included in the conversation about what's to come in the future. And so Bbase is there to find, highlight, cultivate, empower those people, put them in the spotlight. Shout out to Dogman Devices. Shout out to Reftone. Shout out to Soul Asylum Studios with their amazing speakers. Shout out to Modbab, a Black-owned synthesizer company here in the United States. Shout out to Handsome Audio. Shout out to Narrative Audio, right? Before you know it, Bbase is going to become a vital conduit for all new Black and brown technology companies in the United States and globally. That's right. We are not just stopping with America. We are starting here. But my goal is to have chapters in places like Nigeria, Tanzania, South Africa, right? Germany, and so on. Because there are people of color all over the world who are willing and have been contributing to this particular field. Not just audio technology, but also as a doer and a thinker. Audio producers, post-production, broadcast, communication, and so on. So many of us are here, but we're not being seen and heard. And so Bbase's job is to highlight those people and to put them in the spotlight and give them a platform of value and equity, right? So one last check on Messenger before I bounce. And I will be on Discord today as well as Facebook if you'd like to talk. By the way, I'm loving my jazz. Oh yes, one last thing before I depart, because it looks like we don't have much messages. Okay, the website again, I have a question. The website is www.thebase, that's base, BBASE.org. I'll type that in Messenger really quickly. Let's see, oops. I didn't plan this part out well. The people would be talking to me. Oh, shout out for you buying a Zulu. Handsome Audio, home of Zulu, the world's first passive analog tape simulator. Oh snap, almost typed Handsome Audio's website. It's thebase.org/bus kit. Boom. All right, so the Mean Gene and so on, that should be on the site. So one thing I wanted to read really quick is a status update that I think would be of importance for you to be aware of, right? So think about this the next time you talk about going to events like NAMM or AES, right? Things historic audio organizations can do. And when I mean historic, I mean organizations that have been around for a long time and they're predominantly white. So we're talking about things like AES and NAMM, right? Things historic audio organizations can do at trade shows, free or heavily discounted tables to audio companies owned by POC with prominent placement in key spots. So I'm going to say that again. Things historic audio organizations can do At trade shows, they should offer free or heavily discounted tables to audio companies predominantly owned by POC with prominent placement in key spots. Bbase, the Black and Brown Association of Sound Engineers, is here to help you do the right thing. The reason why I'm saying that today is because it costs a lot of money to display at these trade shows. A lot. Thousands upon thousands of dollars, right? And truth be told, a good chunk of people that are in this industry that are of color are using financial resources that other people don't normally have to use to go into business. They're also compensating for things that are not normally, as predominant in other situations for people that are not people of color. A lot of times we're making up ground that other people don't have to make up, right? There's that famous picture of the girl who is the black woman who is about to run a race, and there's a white businessman next to her, and her path is laden with landmines, and she has to jump over extra holes, and there's a guy with an axe waiting for her, and the businessman's path is shorter and clear of obstacles. And that's very similar to what it's like to be a minority business owner in America, to be a person of color that owns a business. Is we're historically not able to obtain small business loans from banks. We have to overqualify ourselves. We have to overprove ourselves in situations where other people do not. It's even worse if you're a woman of color. The things that black and brown women go through to just be able to be in business are insane, right? So I think organizations like AES and NAM should extend an olive branch to us and say, you know what, we want you here, right? We want to make it easy for you to be here. So, if it's your first year or your second year here or whatever, like this is your discount, right? Organizations have nonprofit pricing. They have minority women and business owner pricing for certain governmental services and things that you can obtain. So why not our audio organizations? Why not? I'm bringing my equipment to your trade show to attract an audience that normally would not come. So again, why am I paying you after overcoming all these obstacles that in many ways were put in place by the people that started this foundation that you want me to contribute to? Why am I paying you all this money when I barely could afford to make this equipment? Because nobody would help me. Because nobody would give me a job and train me in these skills. I had to go train myself because no one would even think twice about what I had to offer. So my point is, it's just like the vote situation where people of color were saying we needed to make sure that the DNC or whoever wins the presidency remembers where they got their vote from. I think it's about time people remember where they got their swag from in the audio industry. What do you think? Right? Like, y'all wouldn't have trade shows if we didn't have music. Y'all wouldn't have music equipment needs if we didn't make the music for y'all to make a living off of, right? Like, there's definitely a large number of people in this industry that work with people that are of color, and they're not of color themselves, right? So we are definitely a keystone piece of what's needed for a successful audio industry. And on top of that, we also are kind of like the reason that this stuff even exists. Like it has been about us for a very long time. People don't like to portray it that way. They like to talk a lot about the person that managed this person or the person behind this person and so on and so forth. But that's not necessarily the case. It is about the talent first, right? There wouldn't be no such thing as a talent scout if there was no talent. Question, Mean Gene, how hard would it be for us to start our own trade shows? About as hard as you and I and several other people that make equipment or have a care and a concern about this, or this amazing organization called Bbase, to sit down, get together, plan the event, find the location that we're going to do it in. This time of year and perhaps the earlier part of next year is still going to be pretty much virtual. So that makes it a little easier, just makes it a little bit more technologically heavy for us to have a trade show. But to have a trade show is just simply an agreement between multiple parties of people saying that they will get together, pool money, and show their equipment together and invite the public in, either for a fee or not. When we did the master plan in Raleigh, North Carolina, when Handsome Audio put that together, people paid $25 to get in. normally to get into AES is like $100 plus. I think if you buy a membership, the trade show is free, but you still got to buy the membership, or unless somebody gives you a guest badge. So when you think about it, we could be charging way less money to do our own trade shows and not have to set our goal so high. Like if our goal is not 25,000 people, it's just 100 people, or it's just 250 people, and so on and so forth. That's fine. You do not need to conquer the universe the first time you try to do something. You just need to be able to say you did it. That's something that I attribute to a great author named Kurt Vonnegut Jr. Sometimes the experience of just doing something is enough to wet your whistle and show you that there are numerous possibilities available to you that we can enjoy if we simply put our minds to trying it. Right? That's our issue, is we're not trying to have our own trade shows. You understand? So Mean Gene, if you want to reach out to me, my email is info@thebase.org. So just add info and @ on that web address I shared, and just finish it with thebase.org, and reach out to me about this trade show, because I'm getting together a list of black and brown audio companies that are down to do this. Because I honestly think that until people see that we are capable of doing this on our own, they won't really look at us as like a viable entity to speak to. And I don't mean just Base. I mean us as black and brown inventors, men and women of color, regardless of pronoun, that are able to do this without them. And even if we're not bringing in the kind of cash that they're bringing in, it's still not going in their pocket, right? Regardless of what people think, the minute you take a black and brown dollar out of a pocket that isn't in our community and you go back into your own, things change, right? Like people have contributed money to Base, right? Base has these amazing hoodies and sweatshirts and fleeces and t-shirts that we've been selling on our website. I encourage you to buy one. It costs money, but it goes towards Base. It goes towards our trade shows. It goes towards our educational outlets. It goes towards paying for our website. It goes toward paying for Zoom so that we can have private Zoom and trade show style Zooms, like Zoom webinar. Like those things all cost lots of money to do. And so buying items that in turn you're getting something back for separating some money from yourself to us is part of like why people like community leaders will constantly talk about the power of, and I don't mean to exclude anyone, but the power of the black dollar, right? Like if black folks and brown folks, Latino folks, so on and so forth, indigenous folks, First Nation family, what up, right? If we get together and even if we raise $5,000, right? $5,000 is way more than enough money to secure a space for a trade show, because we're not thinking about trying to take the Javits. We're thinking about, well, let's go to Chicago in the outskirts, or let's go to North Carolina. Let's go to here. Let's go to there, where we can get a conference hall for way less money that'll still hold 500 people if we really wanted it to, and they'll see people's gear, right? This is how you start things like this. And when I really sit back and think about it, it's low-hanging fruit. We should all do it together. It should be something that is uplifting to us. It would be more than amazing if people brought their children with them, right? Like introduce our kids to what we do and bring them into this world just like everybody else does with their children. Hold on for 1 second, please. Introduce our kids to what we do, open up their minds, right? You might have kids that come to these events that may not want to go into music, but because they saw that people that look like them are actually making equipment and manufacturing goods and selling them, and they're successful and they're intelligent and they're articulate and they're open-minded and they're down to earth and they're not trying to insult you because they're accomplished and successful, or they're not speaking down to you. Those are the sorts of things that uplift people and they inspire people. When we did the master plan in Raleigh, there was a kid who was barely out of college who was there. Actually, no, he was barely out of high school. And that really blew my mind, because sometimes we forget that, like, it isn't just about how you build yourself up, it's who you're bringing with you. So again, I'm not going to take too much more of y'all's time. It's been exactly about an hour. 5 minutes shy of an hour. again, y'all can hit me up on, I'm going to type my email address real quick. And I'm going to try to not knock anything over. You can see my dirty laptop, because that's what I do. I use it. So my email address is info@thebase.org. Ooh, yeah. All right. So that's my email address, info@thebase.org. It is not Bbase, it's the base. The first B is silent. Why? Because that's just how we roll. All right. I appreciate y'all taking your time. And again, I'll put this back just because I think it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's true. All right. Let me just put this back on the screen because this is what this video was about today. There it is, folks. The Bass Bus Summon Mixer Kit to blow your mind, right? Something this small is going to make a big impact in the way your audio sounds. If I were you, I'd jump on it right away. $100 plus shipping and tax gets you an 8-channel summing mixer that has saturation, inductor bass DQ, and compression on the inputs of the summing mixer, and a pair of transformers, right? A pair of transformers on the output to give you even more fat tones. You can't even begin to imagine how crazy that is. Go look up what a summing mixer costs, right? Again, check it out and enjoy yourself and the rest of your Sundays. Be safe, be aware of your surroundings, and protect yourself at all times, as they say in the boxing ring. My name is Langston Masingale.